Isn't that true? Trying to look good. Um,
Yep.
all right, here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Lunch Money with Scott and Edan. This is the podcast where Edan and I try to take your revenue strategy out for a cup of coffee and make it cry. We hope that if you like this episode, if you get value out of these conversations, that you like and subscribe to this channel because we really enjoy doing it. And Don and I both like money. We hope that you like money too. And so here we are, off to the races. Don, how are you?
Good. And by the way, I think it's a good combination because I'm very good with coffee and you get good with making people cry.
I
So I
love
think
making
it's a
people
good.
cry. What have we got going on today?
Yeah, I think today we're gonna go tackle some quotas and annual quotas discussion. And yeah, if you guys are not watching the video, Scott was making a face now of like, oh my God. Yeah. So
Annual quotas. Annual quotas are like one of these things that I feel like are oftentimes can be the bane of the existence of a sales organization. I periodically question, why do they even exist? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they just this necessary evil that we all have? But I think more importantly, what we want to talk about today is what are the alternatives that are out there for people to use when assigning a number to their sellers. And we see a lot of annual quotas out there, but why don't we see more teams trying to do something different? So
let's go.
that's what
Let's
we want
dive
to
into
do.
it.
All right.
Yep.
So Adon, let's start off right out of the gate. Like annual quotas. Why? Like, why do we have this? Why do we do it? Why don't we do something different? Let's start with the why do we do annual quotas in the first place?
Yep. It's fairly straightforward and simple. It's really a financial planning tool, right? You have a plan. You're sitting around with the company as a whole. Usually, it start off from the CFO and board discussions about, okay, what are the targets? What do we want to achieve this year? And if you want to kind of grow the company by X number, let's say $20 million in revenue, then you need to have a $20 million kind of target, and you got to assign that as the quota or as the target. And then you break it down somehow to, this is how I'm going to do every year for every team, for everything. But it really starts off from a pure financial kind of exercise.
Okay, so that makes sense, right? You take the number, let's call it 24 because I'm not very good at math. You have a $24 million target. You take that, you divide that out, and you're at $6 million a quarter. You divide that across the team, you put a little bit of a stretch on top of it, and now 15 months later, your team's stuck with this number that you had come up with. They're freaking out. It's the end of the year. Things have changed in the business. Things have changed in the marketplace. But we're still beholden to this annual number.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's the easiest kind of less friction process to go through. It's kind of a blunt force, like, okay, this is it. Let's do it. You said 15 months, and you're right, because if you think about annual process, it kind of happens 3 months ahead of time. And so if you look at the whole year as 12 months, so by that time, kind of 15 months ahead of time, say, we need $20 million there. And so it's very easy. It's the company's goal. You put the numbers, and now, fact that it's easy, then really comes the question is like, is it the best?
Yeah, let's throw that question out there, shall we? What do you think? Our annual quotas, are they good? Are they bad? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes.
All right.
That's
Well,
that.
there's the episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we joke about this and we say, like, okay, it depends, but it really is like an important question. Like, if you are a sales leader, if you're a CEO, if you're on the board of a company and you're thinking about quoting at your sellers, like, are they good or are they bad? Like, what are your thoughts?
So I don't think quotas are inherently good, inherently bad or evil or come from a wrong place, right? It's a critical tool for a company. Right? You need to set
Absolutely.
a direction. You need to have goals. You need to figure out how you're going to advance. It should probably ideally come from a larger plan of a multi-year kind of planning of how we're going to get to some kind of a milestone or an exit or whatever we need. So it is a very, very important planning tool and a way to set and direct the company where they want to go. The problem is that when it becomes either rigid or unrealistic, and creates this endpoint that is not always kind of connected to what is really happening for you in the market, and it creates this day of die or make it or die, kind of December 31st or whatever your end of year is,
The world ends. The
And the
world
world
ends on
ends,
December
and
the
this is
31st.
kind of the drop dead. And again, I mentioned about the multi-year plan, which kind of counter to the multi-year planning that you did. If you say year one, if we don't make $20 million in December 31st, then it's bad and we're dead. And so it kind of contradicts both the planning and the dynamics of what happens to you in the market when you have a this is your drop down dead kind of date. And so that's the part of the challenge that you get with uh, the bad stuff, or where people feel like it's more evil.
Yeah. And you're 100% right. And the other thing is like, when you think about how deals actually work, I remember doing a deal with Apple, and people were like, my CEO was pushing me like, "Hey, is Apple going to close at the end of this quarter?" Apple doesn't give a shit about our quarter end. Apple wants to, solve a problem, and they're going to do it in their own time. And I don't think that, deals or customers particularly care about your fiscal calendar. I think that it oftentimes forces salespeople to do unholy things for the company. I think that it can force them to maybe act in a negative way towards customers, because they're trying to jam this thing to the end of the year. Um, so they end up like with an annual quota, in my experience, you end up compressing the pressure on the sales team into these kind of weird spaces. Like we all know that end of the year hero, that person that's like, kind of plugs along in a very average way, and then in December just like knocks it out of the park. But they're also you run into pushing and you discounting, and you're like, oh, hey Don, will you please sign this by December 31st? Or like really it's like, hey Don, will you please sign this by December 20th so that I can hang out with my family over the holidays? Like all of those kinds of things. Whether it closes in December or January, like we want to hit that number on a spreadsheet, but why?
Yeah, well, because you think about it, all quarters numbers, and these are all made up, right? These numbers are made up because they were created as
Yes.
a means to progress things, and human beings need that structure in order to achieve results. Um, but you're right. The weakness in that made up manufactured cycle is that it disconnects from the deals and the dynamics, things like seasonality that happens in certain markets.
Sure.
And so if you're like in ed tech or government, or they all have kind of their cycles. So you can create a weird situation between misalignment of how buying cycles work towards that rigid kind of a made up schedule that you put in there. And then an annual kind of quota, an annual structure could really be misleading to people and how you want them to behave, and for you and your expectations, because they won't, because you made up December 31st. It doesn't mean that, the selling into school systems, that's when they're going to make their transactions. And so that's the gap that happens. You need the structure, but it's not something always aligned to your dynamics and kind of the real world.
Yeah, I have a friend
Um,
who is in GovTech for a big, publicly traded company. Yeah, he does basically zero revenue in Q1 and Q4 on the calendar, and the government fiscal year ends September 30th. He does so much business in Q3, but on paper he looks like a dud because he's missing that Q4, but he's at his annual number there. So I can definitely see the challenges that you're talking about. Um, but let's break it down. First, for leaders, like are annual quotas good or bad for you if you're running a team? Like, what does that look like?
well, on the good side, it gives you a benchmark, gives you a way and a method to coach people and manage them, and to forecast and try to build a cadence of how they're going to work. It's a very good part, and it's an important part for people to be able to progress along the journey and make it. Because again, a year is a long time to get
Yeah.
there. It's kind of like, you need to put this destination on your GPS map if you want to get there, because otherwise you're not going to get there if you're going to keep looking for, what my next turn is. So it's an
Right.
important dimension to put there as a leader, um, to get to where the company wants you to get to.
I also believe that if you're a sales leader, if you're a VP of sales, if you're a CRO, whatever the title you take is, like calling an annual number and signing up for that is part of the job, right? The company has to forecast revenue. If you are, involved in building out that number, like you said, oh, I'm willing to deliver $20 million next year. So if you're going to sign up for the number, like you sign up for the number. The one thing that I would caution, and I think that I learned this from you a long time ago, is if you have that annual number, it forces you to manage to the number instead of to the behaviors that you want to get. So I've seen a lot of CEOs, I've seen a lot of CROs who just end up obsessing over the dashboards, and they just start managing everybody by spreadsheet instead of trying to help the reps move forward. And like they're like having worked for a leader who just manages by spreadsheet, it's a miserable experience. Like they don't want to help you be successful. They just want to make sure that you're in the green on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, and you know, I might, it might sound like I'm turning philosophical on us right now,
No,
but
let's do it.
this is really kind of that
Go all
managing.
Play-Doh.
Yeah. I should, you know, change kind of my pose for that. But
Get the toga.
this is this is where you really, you know, it's kind of like managing your deals versus managing your pipeline, or managing outcomes versus managing numbers. The way I usually like to talk about it is the difference between the what and the how, right? And the what is what number you want to achieve. How to get there. This is where you want to be in tune to your deals, to the dynamics, to this is where you want to use your dashboard as the means to track how you're progressing versus to score yourself and like I'm a good or bad.
Mhm.
Um, because otherwise you create this binary world. So it's either you hit the quota or you miss the quota, right? And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what happens. And Q1, Q2 can be great, then Q3 you suck. And it's like you can create a distorted environment of like, oh, is it good or is it bad? And uh, you need to. There's more shades to that gray. And if you just look at the number as your only indicator, then you're 1 or 0. But if you
Yeah.
say it, no, this is the what I'm trying to get to. How I'm getting there is different. Now, I'll give an example. It's like, you know, I think we talked about it earlier a little bit on different types of deals that could show up in different times of the quarter. Is it good or is it bad? If you got a whale, is it good or is it bad? And so that kind of a nuance is really, really important, and will trick you if you manage to the number versus how you get to your number.
Yeah, to your point, it's a 1 or a 0, and you can walk out of that conversation like you could have absolutely done a great job all year long, and you're either a 1 or a 0. And if you're a 0, you sort of feel like you failed, which is terrible. It kills the nuance, and it doesn't give any room for context. And when you've got that hard line in the sand, right? And this is what, people, nobody wants to hear about the deal that, the $5 million deal that slipped over, and Apple signed on January the 5th. They would just want to go like, oh, were you at 100% or were you not? And
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 it,
I think that's
and you know,
it's hard to sell.
but this is a good point, because even the signals back to learn from what's working or not working will be distorted. Because that example of like $5 million deal that happens on January 5th, it's like you could end the year and look at this. Is how I'm getting to the number wrong? Is it wrong for me to have in the mix large deals because they don't happen to me? Or
Hmm.
what was wrong is that no, I managed it incorrect, or it wasn't aligned correctly, or didn't forecast that correctly, because it did close at the end of this. So it was a good deal. And
Yeah.
so again, that 1 or 0, without the context of we live in a very dynamic market, will get you to the wrong conclusions and the wrong indications if you don't have the other elements in there. It's like, is my how wrong? I shouldn't have big deals, or no, it was good deals. I should forecast them better or manage them better.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so we talked about management. Let's talk about the individual contributors, the account executives. How does the annual quota works for them?
I mean, in my experience, it is a absolute roller coaster. You come in, it's January, you get your quota, you're super excited, you're jazzed about it, and then like especially like when I was managing European teams, July, August hits and nothing happens, and that nothingness leads to the panic that starts kind of September 1st, and 100% like in that time frame, people are freaking out, and then it's a sprint in Q4. And man, if you're an IC, like if you're lucky, you're crawling across the finish line and you're gasping for air, and like you need a month off just to kind of recover from that.
Yeah. You also have these weird behavior patterns that start to evolving when you have this annual quotas. And one for instance, like these guys that are like 110% of quota, by an October kind of time frame. What happens with them? How they start to behave when it's a one, oh, yeah, I made the number, so I'm kind of fine. Right. On the
Yeah.
contrary, maybe I'll push it out for next year to start hedging my bets so I could start the year strong. You start driving all sorts of kind of weird behaviors when it's the 1-0 kind of end of year thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, if I had a seller on my team that was at 110% in his of his number in October, like that person is definitely in accelerators. I would, God, I would hope that any seller over 100%, is going to go crazy and try to make as like we like money. Like I would hope that they would try to make as much money as humanly possible in those last couple of months. If you're slacking when you're in accelerators, like that's not a good salesperson.
Or your comp plan is not really a good one.
No, that could be true too. I think the scarier thing for me when I think about the ICs with an annual number, there's two people. There's the one person who is at 80% of their number, and they might be able to get to 95 if they really hustled, but they're not going to get into an accelerator. So I think that person will 100% sandbag, and they will just push everything out to the new year in order to start that year off. An even worse person to have on the team is that seller that does nothing for the first 3 quarters. And they just kick back and go, well, hey, I'm on an annual plan. And like, I'm working on it and I'm going to get to my number and blah, blah, blah. And they don't do anything at all year long. And then they do just enough in Q4 to not get fired. I think having a quota like that, it incentivizes people to game the system versus selling like a normal human being would and trying to maximize their revenue and their income.
Yeah, and
So
I'll add one more thing about
yeah,
this because there's
yeah,
if we talk a lot about high performance team and we like building and structuring high performance teams. And a high performance team is not one that performs that just get judged on the end of the game or December 31st. High performance team is one that constantly performs at a very high level. And the results then
yes.
are miraculous at the end of the year. So if you just put the goalpost right out there 12 months out, which is like starting a basketball game and there's all this, 4 quarters, like it creates those kind of nuances that you just outlined of people that could have done significantly better and could have raised their standards and performed really, really well. But you're basically putting the rules for them to such as like, I'm a high performer, so I know I could make a big run in Q4 and make the number. And I'll wait for Q4 because you
It's
constructed it this way.
it's such a roll of the dice though.
Yeah.
And as you know, Don, like I like holding people accountable to a monthly number. Whether they're on an annual quota, annual comp plan or not, like I feel like you have to look at it on a monthly basis. To use your basketball analogy, like we both like the Warriors, like, and if the Warriors are like, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to do anything until like the middle of Q3, like they're never winning a game. Like they want to come out of the blocks hot. They want to run the clock all the way to the last second and make every point count during the entire time.
And there's
Um,
a note about momentum as well. You want to build throughout the
yeah,
year, and
yes,
you lose momentum if you're so far away, or if you don't have these more frequent type of ways to measure it.
it kills your psyche too as a seller. Like if you don't have the momentum, it kills the psyche. So let's talk about the alternatives. Like if annual quotas are, I don't want to say broken, but at least flawed. Like what are the alternatives that people have there?
So there's a variety of it. I think there's you got the quarterly quotas that you can set up. You got the monthly. You got weekly that you can set up. But those I think are kind of an exercise that you do
Yeah,
just
my
how you
daughter's got a weekly
slide.
quota.
Yeah, and again, it's important how you kind of set that, but that's kind of more of a mathematical work. I think when you look at other models, you start looking at models like rolling quotas, when you really
Yeah,
change the type of quota or what the quota is on monthly, quarterly kind of basis based on market conditions and how well you're building your pipeline and indications about product market fit. So you basically kind of, every quarter, every month decides what the quota is for the next month. And so,
yeah,
um, and it kind of rolls all the way through it. So it's like you kind of don't have the annual kind of cycle for it. So that's kind of one alternative.
I don't know if this is because it's how I started my career as a salesperson, but I've always liked quarterly quotas that reset each quarter. There's a level of agileness to that, and it's a little bit more responsive to changes that happen in the market. The one thing I would warn, and I got bit by this when I had a seller close a deal that was, probably 3/4 of his annual target. Um, I think if I remember correctly, the guy had like $1.5 million number. He closed $1 million deal in 1 quarter and basically made 200% of his OTE on that one deal because he was getting quarterly accelerators on it, and that was the end of quarterly accelerators for that company. Like, it's so expensive, and it was like horrible to like pay this person 200% of their OTE for coming in at 60 or 70% of their annual number because of one big deal. So I think like
Well, quarterly
that's one to watch
accelerators,
out. It gets expensive.
yeah, you have to handle with care because at the end of the day, even the quarterly, even the rolling that we're talking about, it rolls up, and at a certain point, the company will have an annual number. There's going to be an annual plan
Yes.
that you're going to be doing for. And when you do the comp plans and the commissions run and the accelerators, even when you do quarterly, you want to put it in the context exactly to your case of like, I don't want it that the game will be over if they performed only in 1 quarter. It could be if they made the number that I wanted them, but there's finance behind it. So you want to be, proceed with caution, but I would even say all of those would at some point at what level in the company will come from some kind of an annual number that you're trying to hit. It's just going
Yes.
to give you more flexibility and tools. Some other types of quotas that you get is sometimes you get the team quotas or pods
Yeah.
where you can really put together a group of people that you're trying to have achieve a certain kind of a revenue outcome or a goal, or say, okay, this pod's going to give me $2 million or $1 million. And sometimes in those quotas, will have some other KPIs in them because different team members have kind of different goals in them. So we start getting a little bit of a hybrid of a mix of, do I have pipeline metrics and meetings metrics and all sides of deal sizes and so you might have there a mix. Again, just be aware it exists and it's a good one, but you want to be also cautious to make sure you don't lose the sight of the pot's supposed to deliver a certain set of revenue that you bring in.
Yeah. Precisely. There's also like crazy ones out there, like, for PLG companies that might want to use a usage-based comp model. I think that that's really interesting. And you've got more and more companies that are switching over to a usage-based pricing model now. They're going to have to commit to some type of usage-based compensation for their sales team. You've got growth quotas for the CS team and the account managers. Like, you could start putting quotas around everything if you wanted to, like, go crazy.
Yeah. And we've even seen companies do the OQR comps, right? The
Yep.
people get, did you move the needle on certain priorities that we wanted to do instead of did you, close $1 million worth of business?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you can really go crazy in these things.
Yeah, the spiffs are terrific. Like when you start rolling them out. So I guess like why don't companies adopt this? Like this seems like a no-brainer to me. Like it doesn't seem like the annual comp plan drives the behavior, drives it drives behavior, but does it drive the most ideal or efficient behavior from your salespeople?
So I think that I don't like the answer that I have for you here because I think it's because it's done this way for a long time. And so annual quotas are easy to explain. It's kind of what people expect. It's how your board expects it. It's the modeling that everybody does. It's easy to predict until they don't work. And so it's kind of been the way things have been working and everybody's used to. So if you want to do something different, you're going to have to start explaining
Yeah.
and work the way through why are you doing it differently.
Yeah, I guess your CFO loves it because it's neat and tidy and doesn't require a lot of work to think about, and you can just kind of go like, "Oh, let's just do it." Like they're not in the trenches; they don't know what's going on in the marketplace. Like they're just like, "Oh, hey, $20 million. There's your quota. Give $20 million. Go tack on 20% to it, and assign 24
Yep.
out to your team."
Yep. And
Okay.
if you didn't do it, then you're not good. It also requires, I think, a different mind shift and mindset and a different way
Yeah.
of operating. Because if you really think about the other models, you truly have to start trusting your managers more. You have to coach them. You have to help them build systems around how do we drive the right outcomes from the right behaviors. It's no longer just a spreadsheet. It's going back to my point about the what versus the how. It's really
Yeah.
entrusting them to say, hey, leaders, here's what we want to achieve. How are we going to get there? I'm going to empower you and going to let you drive it because we've hired you because you're really, really good and you're really, really smart and you're the best professional out there. And so how to get this done, I'm going to leave it up to you and support you and coach you. And it's a very risky, scary thing to do
Yeah.
to install it on them because at the end of the day, you're accountable for it. as the top leader or whatever. Yeah, and it's a mind shift. And I really don't think many people truly are willing to kind of install their destiny in the people they hire. They will say it, but they're not really. That's why the spreadsheet comes into. Oh, it's kind of a safety place to be trying to feel like I have control over it.
Yeah,
Um,
it reminds me when I tried to start that company a few years ago that, really based on your idea of like of lead God, where you give the opportunity to the salesperson that has the highest propensity to go close it. Like nobody wanted to do that because I think most companies would rather live with a broken but familiar system than try something that is short-term messy and new, but long-term better for the organization.
but we might need to do an episode about this because I think it was a very.
I think it's a great idea. I still think it's a good idea.
I think so too. Um,
All right, well, let's go raise some money and sell it.
all right, let's try to put some final thoughts and a wrap up to this. Uh, Annual quotas, they're not evil, they're not horrible, but they definitely have their flaws that you have to be extremely aware of them as you use them. Otherwise, you're going to trip over them. And I will add one more point here that we didn't much talk about, and it's like my depends now. It depends because there are different revenue types and different revenue cycles that are easier to deal with, or sometimes really require. You talked about your daughter, kind of a more rigid or more frequent type of sets of quotas. So if you look at small, high volume types of deals that, if you close 3, 4, or 5 deals a month, then, an annual quota is such a far away thing that
Yeah.
really would hurt you and undermine your ability to perform versus, you close very large deals that take 9 months to close and it's $1 million each of them. Then if you do a monthly quota or a weekly quota for that one, it wouldn't make sense. So you want to adjust and you want to kind of mix and sometimes run a more sophisticated, if you run multiple lanes of revenue, how you do it, high volume versus the big deals versus sales cycles. And so take that into account as well as how you pick it.
Yeah. And maybe it's not the annual quota that is the challenge. I think that, one of the side effects of an annual quota is it forces sales, I don't want to call them leaders, but it forces sales managers to worship a spreadsheet and they just sit there and they, rather than thinking about what actually drives performance, they're just like, how do I make this green? How do I make sure that this is all, that Edan or Scott is in the green zone? And not like what's really driving performance. And when the companies that I've seen that manage their sales team with a spreadsheet, they're the ones that tend to just sort of stall out when all they're thinking about is measurement and not improvement or performance there.
And when we started talking about this topic, my initial reaction was about, when you have a problem with annual quotas, you have a problem with management.
Yeah.
Because, and this is a little bit my nuance between what is the difference between a sales manager and a sales leader, right? A sales manager just tries to manage the spreadsheet. So if your annual
Yes.
quota is creating all these things we talked about that, for me, a lot of them is that you just don't have a strong enough manager there because he's managing, he's not leading them and leading to the revenue outcome. So I think that's part of exactly to your point about if you get an annual quota and you manage by spreadsheet, then it's not a good combination that's working out for you.
Yeah. You're not a good sales
Um,
leader.
and I want to address, so we talked about the leads, I want to talk about the reps and kind of annual quotas for them. And I think
Yeah.
for the reps, it's know what games you're playing. I mean, what is it? How is it structured? What the company is looking to do? Plan for you individually how you're going to make your number.
Yeah.
Even if you have an annual quota or you got a monthly quota, it shouldn't even matter for you. You should be having your cadence. You should think about what should I do every month? What should I do every week? Put yourself and on yourself your own sets of quotas and KPIs and measurements of progress. You control your own destiny. Make it count. The quota is just there to help you make money. You're in charge.
Yeah. I think that that's 100% right. I don't think that you could have said it any better. And the only thing that I might add to that would be to go advocate for better systems, right? If you need the tools to be able to go out and hit an annual number, like make that part of your annual plan. Like go advocate for these things and go talk to your leadership and say, hey, look, like here's my plan to get to this annual number. Here are the things that I need for that, and go build a business plan so that you can hit it and take a leadership role in your organization to help make that happen. I'm not suggesting you burn down the entire house. But what I am saying is like, you're coming into a new year, like let's go rebuild that. But let's not use the same blueprints that you were using to build it for the prior 2 years.
Yep. All right, I think that's it for lunch money for this week. You guys go sell something, and don't forget, use your quota to your advantage. Don't just let it hang over your head.
Go make that money. We'll catch you next time.